This week's reading from Rays of the One Light is entitled, Who is this Son of Man? And this is again for Palm Sunday. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. On Palm Sunday, the throng joyfully acclaimed Jesus Christ as he entered Jerusalem, casting palm fronds before him and singing, Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. The Lord bless the King of Israel. Jesus Christ had told the people the Son of Man must be lifted up. His reference, so we are told, was to the mode of his impending crucifixion. Some persons on that occasion had asked, Who is this Son of Man? Was Jesus a human being merely? Those who, on Palm Sunday, called him King, little realized the actual nature of his kingdom. He was far more than what they imagined. Yes, of course, he ate, drank, walked, slept, and talked like others. His consciousness, however, was centered in infinity. Yes, again, he laughed like others, but his laughter expressed divine joy, not mere merriment. Again, he wept like them, but never with human grief. The tears he shed were for the sufferings of unenlightened human beings. Never were they shed in self-pity. Jesus Christ was wakeful in God. Most people, by contrast, are asleep spiritually. How strange to reflect that less than a week from that entry into Jerusalem, so joyfully acclaimed, he would be arrested, condemned, and crucified. Such is the bitter sweetness of human existence. Smiles of welcome one day, insults, even persecution the next. How few realize that Christ's suffering would not be for himself, but for people's ignorance, for those who had not yet understood the deeper reality that dwelt also in them. Everyone is born trailing clouds of glory, as the poet Wordsworth put it. Even the meanest beggar has lived a story, or will eventually have lived it, more magnificent than the greatest epic ever written. In the Bhagavad Gita, this dichotomy between the Son of Man and the inner Son of God is beautifully described. Sri Krishna, representing God in human form, reveals his true nature in infinity. In the 11th chapter of that great scripture, his chief disciple Arjuna exclaims, O infinite light, thy radiance spreading o'er the universe shines in the very darkest abyss. Thy voice overwhelms the roar of cosmic cataclysms. Lo, the myriad stars are thy diadem. Thy scepter radiates power everywhere. O immortal Brahman, Lord of all, again and again at thy feet of infinity, I lie in prostration before thee. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. I'd like to begin with a reading from Whispers from Eternity. This is Master's Book of Prayer Poems. This one is, Teach us to consider no work more important than thy work. O Spirit, as no work is possible without borrowing from thee the power to perform it, so teach us to consider no work greater than thy spiritual work. Teach us to feel that, since no duty is possible without thee, so no duty is more important than our duty to thee. And teach us to love thee above everything. For we cannot live or love anything or anybody without thy life, thy love. I'm going to just move over a little bit This is, in case you missed the announcement in the beginning, today is Palm Sunday. And it is as you heard in the reading, the week before Easter. Next Sunday is Easter. This is the Sunday before Easter. The Sunday before Easter is always Palm Sunday. Not always on the same day of the year, but something to do with the full moon in a way that I have never quite learned. I think it's the first Sunday after the full moon. Do you know? There's some calculation for when Easter is. It is a floating holiday, which is very strange in the West, where things are very orderly and precise, but very familiar to everybody here. You could say, oh, well, it is many festivals are related to the phases of the moon, and so this is one such. And so Palm Sunday is the day which was such a joyful day of Jesus entering into the city of Jerusalem, as you heard. We focus on the teachings of Yoganandaji here, obviously. And a visitor once asked Yogananda, when Swamiji was also with him, "You call your church the church of all religions, but why do you focus only on Christianity and Hinduism?" And Master could have said, one which he had said at other times, that all religions at their essence are one, and this message that I'm giving is eternal. He did say, I came to bring back original Christianity and as taught by Christ, and original Hindu yoga as taught by Krishna, he said. But at that time, when this guest asked, he did not say that. He said that was the will of Babaji. That's it. That I'm only acting under orders. He said that it was Babaji who told him in person, he says it in Autobiography of a Yogi, but also through all these masters, that let us share these teachings and show these teachings of how the teachings of Krishna and of Christ are the same. Do you mind changing those fins so they're aimed at me? Otherwise I'm going to slowly melt over the course of the talk until there'll be nothing left. So, it is April after all. So, it's very sweet to think, to reflect on the fact that we, in these Sunday satsangs, go over a passage from the Bible, the life of Christ, and a passage from the Bhagavad Gita, from the dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, these two great scriptures, every Sunday. And we do that, and we also read from Whispers from Eternity, because Swamiji did that. Swamiji set that pattern for our Sunday services here at Ananda. And he set that pattern because Master had that pattern. You have the recordings of some of the Sunday services that Master gave in his lifetime. Be a Smile Millionaire is one Life versus Reincarnation is another. Removing All Sorrowing and Suffering. I think they may be the only 3 recordings of Sunday services that Master gave. And you hear him giving a passage from the Bible and a passage from the Bhagavad Gita, and also a reading from Whispers from Eternity, his book of poems. And the reason why Master compared the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita is because his guru, Sri Yukteswar, also compared the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. He wrote a book called The Holy Science, which shows passages from the Bible and also from the Hindu scriptures generally, he says, drawing from several scriptures, saying that they teach the same thing. So you have from Swamiji, from Master, from Sri Yukteswar, but Sri Yukteswarji only wrote the book because Babaji asked him to. And so Babaji said, show the essence of these 2 great teachings is the same, to bring people together. And Babaji asked Sri Yukteswarji, so we can imagine or we can infer, because Babaji himself said, that Christ appeared to Babaji and said, let us send a new expression of this great eternal truth. It isn't that there's some special teaching that's really, really nice and we're going to just have everybody get a new, fresh look on the special teaching. This is the teaching. This is the truth. It's about as eternal and universal as gravity. It isn't anything really more than that, except that if you learn the secret of gravity, you can overcome gravity. And so spiritually speaking, if we learn the secrets of how we're made, we can get out. We can be free. We can attain what these great masters have attained. It's our destiny to do so. You could even say it's our responsibility to do so. And as you heard in the Whispers from Eternity, we have really no other responsibility, certainly no higher one. So, this teaching, that what we just did this morning, has come from this conversation with Jesus Christ, between Jesus Christ and Babaji. And this whole work, the whole reason why we are sitting in this temple this morning, is because of, yes, Swamiji said, let there be a center in Chennai. Yes, because Master said to Swamiji, perhaps one day I'll send you to India. Because of Sri Yukteswar sending Master to America, because Babaji told him to, because Christ asked him to. So we are sitting here because of the wish of Jesus Christ and Babaji, but also Jesus Christ. So you have a very personal and special connection to Jesus Christ. Sometimes it can feel a little distant if you didn't grow up with any kind of relationship to him. Or it can also feel, I know he's really famous, but I don't think he knows me personally, or I know him. Maybe I can make an appointment or something. There's no appointment necessary. This whole work, again, this whole sequence of events, all these falling of dominoes. Is everything okay? Somebody came? Okay. This all came from the will, the wish of Jesus Christ. And for what? This is something I wanted to clarify. The why send this teaching? It talks about Jesus' suffering on the cross was not for himself, but for the ignorance of others. And this is a good point, because we can sometimes get the misimpression that yes, though Jesus was resurrected. Durga, do you mind closing that door? Or Nasim, thank you. So, that because of the resurrection of Christ, and because this suffering, first of all, we have to get clear that his suffering was not for himself. That first of all, it wasn't physical suffering. Certainly the body did suffer physically, but it wasn't that it was physical suffering, and it wasn't that it was suffering because of what happened to him. He did say, let this cup pass from me. Let me not have to go through this experience, but thy will be done. So he was saying it, let God, let your will be done. And so he expressed that in a way that we can relate to. But he also said, even at that moment, if I would, I could call 12 legions or 10 legions, some huge number of angels, and they would come, and they would not be happy. But he said, but I will do the will of my Father. And so Master said that Jesus could have saved himself. He could have called those angels and wiped everybody out, the bad guys anyway, and then carried, gone off in to do whatever else. What's next? But he said, if he had done that, if he had considered his body as reality, because why would he call them? To protect the body, to save the body. That was all that was being threatened. And Master said if he had considered his body as reality, he would have lost God for incarnations. Remember, it says in the scriptures that when a lower dharma conflicts with a higher dharma, the lower dharma ceases to be a dharma. When a lower duty conflicts with a higher duty, this lower duty is no longer a duty. And our duty to God is our highest duty. That reminds me, actually, once Swamiji said that to me once. I was visiting him in Assisi, Italy, and he said, how do you like it here? And this was my first time meeting him in person. And I said, well, I like it very much, but, of course it was because he was there. It's like, welcome to Uzbekistan. How do you like it? Swamiji, if you're there, I love it. And maybe Uzbekistan is very nice, I don't know. But in any case, I said to him, I have a feeling that even if I said I would like to be here, that you would ask me to return to Palo Alto. This was in California where I was living at the time, a community I had just moved into. And he said, your duty lies there. And then he said, your highest duty is to God, I grant you. But you can serve him while serving there. And for many years I thought of, he said, your duty lies in Palo Alto. Yes, your highest duty is to God, but really go to Palo Alto. But I realized that he was saying also, your duty lies in Palo Alto. Your highest duty is to God, I grant you. Our highest duty is to God, period. Period. Why? Because there's no other reality. There's no one else to have a duty to except God. This whole show is God's show. This whole reality is made out of his consciousness. We are a part of him. He is the only mother, the only father, the only child. He is everything. And so there's no one else to have a duty to. He's playing all the parts. And so, having said that, Swamiji did say, go to Palo Alto. In that case, that meant my specific thing that I had to do at that time. So we have specific things that we have to do outwardly. The boss may say, actually, your highest duty is to me. And the client may say, actually, it's to me. But really, it's to God. But you can see God having fun with you through these forms. And if you get to be the boss and you get to have all the clients, then your duty ends up being to the employees. Just every end of the month when payroll comes. So you just can't get away from having a duty to someone, but it is God. It is God through those forms, working to help us to get free. So going back now to this question of Jesus' suffering, and Master said that he didn't suffer. Though the body suffered, he wasn't touched by any of that. If he could walk on water, if he could bring people back to life from the dead as he did, if he could resurrect himself, as other great masters have done. You read in the autobiography of a yogi how Lahiri Mahashaya was resurrected, how Swami Sri Yukteswar resurrected himself before Yoganandaji in a physical body. So similarly, Jesus did too. It's a great miracle, but especially at that time, in the dark, dark depths of Kali Yuga, when people considered matter to be the only reality, all there was. We can sort of imagine now with, Star Trek and so on, that energy is the reality, and you can dematerialize the body into atoms and then send it through a transporter and then reconstitute the body, and somehow there's something more fundamental than matter. But in Kali Yuga, there was nothing more fundamental according to our understanding. It was just matter is matter is matter, nothing else. By the way, Star Trek, it makes you kind of wonder a little bit that, they beamed people up through this transporter, and a devotee of Master met Gene Roddenberry, the creator of Star Trek, and he saw Autobiography of a Yogi on his bookshelf. And he said, have you read that book? And Gene Roddenberry said, where do you think I get all my ideas? And remember how Master talks about Sri Yukteswar resurrecting and then his body dematerializes, and Master said you could hear the rumbling of atoms and that the body slowly dissolved, but starting from the feet up, but I could still feel the pressure of his hands on my head, and then that went away too, and so on. So quite something. This whole world, this whole universe is much simpler, much more a small world, a small universe than we think. So, the not considering the body as reality, not feeling that suffering, being able to resurrect oneself, was a miracle that everybody in Kali Yuga could understand. Turning water into wine was another miracle he did. Master did something similar, but since there's not a lot of wine drinking, he did it with carrot juice instead of wine. There was a little bit of carrot juice. They had a carrot processing plant. And there were many guests who came, and Master called one of the monks and said, why don't we serve them some of our carrot juice? And the monk said, sir, we actually have just a little bit left, just basically like a little half glass full. Master said, bring that, and put it in a pitcher. And so the monk okay, is everyone going to get 4 molecules of carrot juice? Like, how are we going to do this? And so he came with the pitcher, and he poured the first half glass, and it filled more of the glass than he thought, but okay, he must have misjudged. Then he went to the second person's cup, and more carrot juice came out, and so on. And so I think it was 10 or 14 cups of carrot juice came out of that pitcher. I've always wondered, now, was the pitcher clear and everybody could see, or was it shrouded so you couldn't see the miracle? But the monk knew. It wasn't Master's way to say, "Behold, I give you carrot juice." It wasn't. All of his miracles were subtle. He says the same thing of Sri Yukteswarji, that he wouldn't say, "I prophesy that such and such will occur." He would just say, "Don't you think it might happen? Doesn't it seem like maybe it could?" And there's a few reasons for that. One is we don't want a big show because it only just gets us excited and makes us perhaps feel more in the ego. I don't know. But also because the masters don't impose. They're not going to put anything on us. They offer. It's up to us to receive if we want, when we want, how much we want. And so the even Master, Swamiji says, would rarely make a strong statement like, "You do this, you don't do this." I mean, he did that when it was necessary. But sometimes he would give even a gentle hint. And he said, Master said, "I am guided by intuition, and it guides me to the right course in everything, even details." And his meaning was also that we can be so guided. It wasn't just he was bragging or showing off. So I'm guided by intuition, saying, and so should you. He said, and Master himself said, "I asked a couple to dinner, and I said to them, 'Why not come on Wednesday?' And they said, 'Thursday would be better for us.' And he said, on Thursday it rained heavily, and Wednesday would have been better." And it wasn't that Master saw in his spiritual eye, okay, let's see, Nalaniki, heavy rain. Okay, come Nalaki. It wasn't that he was, needing to check the forecast. He just was in that flow that just said, "Come Wednesday." And if he put his mind to it, then he could explain why. But it wasn't that he was necessarily, having all the reasons. It was just intuition. Swamiji used that example to say one came to trust everything that Master said, or at least one had that opportunity. Even his gentlest hint, you realized, if you followed that, you would be safe. Master said the role of a guru is to save you from 100 complications. Just you follow what he says, and what he says to you. Sometimes he speaks to you personally. If you open the book at random, he says something. If you hear in a talk, a recording, something that resonates, he's talking to you, even in subtle ways. Trust that. It's easy to ignore. It's easy to miss. And it's easy to, if we start to get some sort of other desire, as has happened to me, sort of think, well, I know I'm supposed to trust what he says, but in this case I think actually the other thing is, the thing to do is what I'm thinking. Even though I know that's not ever right, maybe it is right now. And somehow that sounds uninsane at the time, but it is insane, as I, at least in every experience I can remember, came to find out. I was completely wrong. But even in that there was a learning, there was a sweetness. So, Master, Jesus, when his suffering was for the ignorance of humanity, as it says there. Now, it's very important to remember that he was not suffering saying, "Oh, you poor, ignorant people, pavam." It wasn't that at all. And in fact, Swamiji, when he was a young man, was asked to grow a beard by Master, partly because Swamiji was 22 when he came to Master, and he was speaking in the churches to people who were in their 40s. And so, he maybe to have him look older, he asked Swamiji to grow a beard. No one wore beards back then. No one except Fidel Castro. Then when Swamiji wore a beard, he said sometimes in the streets people would call out to him, "Fidel Castro," because he had this beard. So Master said, "It gives you character." And Swamiji said, "It makes me a character." And so he had this beard. And there was a sweet side of that too, that when Swamiji's father came to visit, Swamiji had his beard, let's say, had grown rather full, and in fact, it perhaps made him look a little wild. Master, when some of the other monks said, "Well, Swamiji has a beard, Walter has a beard, we'll grow beards too," and Master said, "Shave the beards. I don't want my boys looking like wild men." And Swamiji thought, he said, perhaps one wild man is enough. But his beard had become full wild. And Master said, "We can't have your father seeing you looking like that." And so Master himself took scissors and trimmed Swamiji's beard. And it was very sweet. And Master was chuckling, Swamiji said, the whole time. And he wasn't exactly sure why, and he has an idea. But now I'm going from a tangent to a tangent to a tangent. That would take us exponentially to too many tangents. So I'm going to stick to the story. But there's another footnote for later. So, Swamiji had a beard. Because he had a beard, he was asked to play the role of Jesus Christ. That's the connection. In a play, there was a installation of officers at a particular organization, and someone there saw Swamiji had a beard and said, "Oh, you could play the role of Jesus Christ." And so he said, "Okay, what would you like to have me do? Perhaps, I have overcome death, or any of the great teachings of Jesus Christ." There was a lame man, and Jesus Christ touched him, and suddenly he could walk again. So the blind man could see. The water turned into wine. So many miracles, so many teachings, proving the reality of spirit over matter. Jesus himself said, "God is a spirit, and you must worship him in spirit and in truth." There's something beyond matter. But this is not what they asked him to do. They asked him to sit at something that was supposed to look like the Garden of Gethsemane, which is where Jesus was right before he was arrested and captured. So not a very happy moment compared to all these moments of overcoming and victory. And instead, he was supposed to lean against a rock and sigh occasionally. Sigh for suffering, ignorant humanity. And Swamiji just thought, my gosh. But anyway, he did it. And that is not the teaching of Christ. Why does he suffer for humanity? Because we suffer. He suffers for our suffering. Do you know any parent who says to you cheerfully, "My child's in the hospital, but it doesn't bother me"? No, they're suffering much. I mean, sometimes you have a parent, the child is thinking about maybe having a cough, and the mother is... He might have a cough tomorrow. And so, but there's another side to that. But in this case, think about how Divine Mother feels for our suffering. She doesn't want us to suffer. Jesus Christ doesn't want us to suffer. The masters, none of them. Krishna, nobody wants us to suffer. That's why they come, to help us. So that suffering is on our behalf and for us. Jesus even said, "O Israel," or Jerusalem, "how often I would gather ye in my arms like a mother hen does her chicks, and ye would not," meaning you would not come, you would not cooperate. I could help you, I could save you from this suffering, but you won't come. And Swamiji writes, I told you of Jesus saying, "Let this cup pass from me," and it can be thought of as, let me not go through this physical suffering. But it was his suffering was not for what would happen to him. He didn't care. But what would happen to the others and what it meant. And Swamiji wrote the lines in that song that Jesus of Christ before the crucifixion saying, "Lord, let this cup pass from me. Let my heart not know so much pain. Must the love thou bearest thy children ever suffer such disdain? Would that I might reveal thy greatness. Nevertheless, thy will be done." And that was his wish. Let me show them your greatness. Let me show them why. So that because your God is so great and people should know? No, because if they saw God's greatness, it would help them. But God, like the masters, doesn't impose. It's up to us. He's not going to push it. He gives us only the freedom, as Master said, to accept him or reject him. And we have that choice every moment. And even if we accept him, we can accept him more. We can do more. Why? For our own joy. That's the simplest reason. It's not because we should. It's not because otherwise you might get hit with a lightning bolt. It's not because of any other reason than it is joy-producing to live in harmony with the divine flow. That realization comes to each one of us in our own hearts at differing times and in differing ways. And so, if you have had that realization, then live by that. Spend more time in that divine vibration. And so, on the cross, what did Jesus say? Again, as a direct contradiction to all of this that he suffered, he said, Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they do. It was not good karma to crucify Jesus, as you can well imagine. And what did he say? Forgive them, for they know not what they do. And Master said that's one reason why I love him so much. That in that, what was such a personal tragedy for him, so it would seem on a human level, he said, forgive them, for they know not what they do. And that is a great teaching for us also. Because it happens to us in our lives, where we have all kinds of crucifixion, as Master said, through misunderstanding, through unkindness. I'm talking of by others to us, that our tender feelings get trampled on, that our generous actions are misunderstood and held in suspicion. All of these little crucifixions of our hearts. And to follow that same teaching, Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But then why are they doing it? And we don't also, Jesus could hold a superior wisdom and say, forgive them, I know what they're doing, they don't know what they're doing, don't hold it against them. But it's not helpful for us to always have that idea, forgive them, for they know not what they do. Infants. We don't want to go in that attitude. But we have to remember too that as Jesus said, thy will be done. So in the same way, when we have a big test, we can say to Divine Mother, thy will be done. And what is her will? I guess it's time for me to suffer, and her will is that I should suffer now. Thy will be done. Bring it on. That is not what she's doing. She's trying to heal us. She's trying to strengthen us. She's trying to help us. And sometimes we only learn through a bit of suffering. She says, Ora jangri? Fine. Renda jangri? Fine. What? Muna? No, I was thinking more like Mupati. Mutapi jangri? Kashtam. But we say, Kashta illa? No problem. Naapatib. Yenilla. I'm practicing my Tamil, and if you can't understand it, don't worry, it's not worth understanding. So we have 40 jangris, and she says, I tried. They put a little warning on the box, the Surgeon General's warning. No, I'm kidding. But when we have 40 jangris, we have to learn some other way. And it's the stomach that teaches us. Sometimes we can only learn through suffering because we overdo it. That's just the way it goes. So in this way too, we learn sometimes through suffering. Suffering is a great motivator. She says, don't touch the stove. Well, but it's so pretty. Ouch! And then we don't forget that. And it isn't that the stove wanted to hurt us. And as Master said, it isn't that God wants you to put your hand in the fire. He said he's given you the freedom to put your hand in or keep it out. Why do you try the fire? So that's what we should remember when we get burned. Why did I try the fire? As Master said, don't seek your smiles where the smiles don't come from. And so, when we get burned by misunderstanding, when we get burned, really what it is reminding us that human love is not enough. Human love is not reliable. Are we reliable? We ourselves aren't reliable. We sometimes can be thoughtless or insensitive. We can do something that hurts somebody without us meaning to. And so, when we get burned by human love, when we get burned by misunderstanding, just remember it's Divine Mother calling us back to herself, saying, your only love will be found in me. Your only joy will be found in me. And so let every little touch of suffering remind us to seek our freedom in Divine Mother's arms. God bless you.